So it looks like I misspoke earlier regarding the demographic questions you have to have. So these are the questions you had to have to capture some demographic information to describe your participants. So notice I only have the question about asking culturally and regarding race, and that was correct. Here I do have gender. That was correct. Here I have major, and I did want you to have them not pre-selected, but I wanted you to have it as a forced choice question. So hopefully you had that in place, and then age. So I was thinking back to a previous semester where I did ask for transfer status or where do you live. You actually don't need to include this. Whoops, I don't know how that's happened. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. So no major. I want to keep that. I'm going to delete transfer, where they transferred and where they live. But I am keeping class standing because that was relevant to this group's IV. So keep that in mind. And I can delete this. So now you should have a clean data set. I went ahead and did some of the work outside of the previous video, and everything's coded. Now when I click this off, you can see they all have all the variables now have I've attached values or labels to each value. So when I click on this, it turns into text. I would wait to delete the stuff you don't need, the variables you don't need, until the very end. And once you have that, you have your IV. IV is one of them is gender. Class standing is the other one. And you have the mental health score, which is their DV. Now your DV, if you followed my earlier video, is going to be somewhere here or not at the end. Doesn't matter where it is as long as you know where you can find it. Once you have your data at up to this point, you're good to move on to the analysis, which we're going to do next. And you could even delete these if you wanted because you don't need them anymore, right? But I'm going to keep these, I don't really need to delete them. The data sheet is clean enough for me. And I'm going to keep it in this way so I can see the labels. You could keep it this way, it doesn't matter. So once I'm here, notice here I have not saved my file. I'm going to actually do that now. You should do it earlier than this point. Desktop, Psy 32221 SPSS data. Notice that the data file is a save file, a .sav. That's how it saves your data, and the output file is a different file, but just make note of that. So save, great. This is letting me know it was saved. Because keep in mind, if I hadn't saved it to this point, if my computer crashed, if I lost electricity and my computer died for some reason, I didn't have enough power, I would have to redo all of this work. So make sure you save. Okay, so I'm going to go to Analyze. You want to go to General Linear Model. Not this one, Generalized Linear Model. Go to the General, and then Univariate. And where you're going to move over are your IVs and your DVs. So you have to look for that. So here I'm going to put my DV in this top empty row. So I'm actually going to make this full screen now. And okay, so I'm going to look for my DV over here. Here's mental health score. And notice these icons here. It depicts the kind of variable that you're working with. You don't have to worry about it too much here. Visually, it might help you, but let's not worry about it. It's not going to impact the actual analysis. So now look for the DV and click on the arrow. I believe you can also move it over. Let me make this a little bit bigger so I could see the full name. Okay, so here you have gender coded. You can also drag it over, or you could click it over, right? Highlight, move it over. You're gonna leave this blank. And let's see, we don't need any post hocs. You would need a post hoc if any of your IVs had more than 2 levels, but we're keeping it simple. We only have independent variables with 2 levels. I'm going to go to options. We want descriptives. I'm going to say yes to effect size, even though I'm not asking you to report that. You might want to look at that later. Let's see. And that looks like it. So again, descriptives and effect size. Continue. And okay. Now, you know how I've been telling you that SPSS treats this window separately from this window? Let me go back if I can find it. Where's SPSS on the bottom? I lost it. There it is. So keep that in mind, that it treats it as a separate file. So if I wanted to save this file, I have to go to File, Save, and that's my output. And notice, it's a SPV file. The actual data file was called SAV, right? So I'm going to call this Psy 321 SPSS output analysis, something like that. Output is the same thing as analysis. Save. Now, okay, so I actually made a mistake. I could already tell, because ethnicity has more levels than I've been telling you to stick to, right? And I forgot this is not looking at ethnicity as one of the variables. Let me go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to close this, analyze, general linear model, univariate, ethnicity. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to look for class standing coded. That's what they actually cared about. It should save the settings I modified here, but let's double check. I clicked on options, check off the first two, great, continue, then okay. There you go. So here it has the 2 levels. Notice that it says 0 is male, 1 is female, and then it tells you how many participants you have of those type. 73 male, 76 female, 97 who we coded as less experience, 52 with more experience as university students. And here you kind of can see a descriptive breakdown. So here you have the averages. You have the male average. Here you actually look here at the total. It's blocking it a little bit. So male total, the average for all male participants was 3.3. The average for all female, right? So go female and then total here. And it's 3.46. I'll go up to the second decimal. Here's the standard deviation. And now if I wanted to look at the average, the mean, just for people with less experience in university settings and those with more experience, then I'm looking here at the bottom at total. Here for students with less experience, their knowledge, their reported knowledge about these resources was 3.3. For more experience, it was 3.5. We don't know if that's a significant difference yet, but here's where to find that data. Now, if you wanted the data that includes experience level and gender, then you're looking here, right? So here you have male participants with less experience. Here's their average. Here's their standard deviation. Here's how many you had. Male participants with more experience. Here's their average or their mean. Here's their standard deviation. Here's how many of those participants you had. So you can see that's not breaking down as nicely as we would have hoped. So your goal is to work towards getting these pretty equal, right? Males with less experience and more experience should be about the same. I'm not going to dwell on that too much because I made up a lot of this data. Keep that in mind. I filled in some of that data for the purpose of showing you an example. Let's see. And here you have your actual analysis. So this is easier to read than if you did this in Excel, because here you have gender, one of our IVs. Here you have class standing, another of our IVs. And let me copy and paste this into another program so I could zoom in. Now you don't need to do this. I'm only doing this so you can see the numbers little bit more clearly. That was the idea. Zoom. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Okay, so here we have gender, right? You're going to have one of your independent variables here. You're going to have another independent variable here, and you're going to have your interaction at this point. Notice the star here. And notice that you have both IVs here. So here, this is a report of a main effect, an analysis to see if there's a main effect for gender. In other words, is there a significant difference between male and female participants' knowledge about on-campus mental health resources? Now, you want to go here. So you're looking at the significance column, and you're looking at gender. And what you're hoping for is a value below 0.05. Now, as you can see, you don't have a value above, below 0.05, so you would simply report that you had no main effect. There was no main significant difference between male and female participants regarding their knowledge about on-campus mental health resources. And the next row reports the data regarding class standing. So that's here. So I'm going to move all the way over here, go into the significance column. Also, unfortunately, not below 0.05. We cannot reject the null. We cannot assume that there is a significant difference between more and less experienced students. Well, based on their class standing, regarding their knowledge about on-campus mental health resources. So keep that in mind. Here we do not have a main effect for either independent variable. That's fine. We just report that. Here we have an interaction. It's above 0.05. Also, we have no interaction. So that's what you would report. Now, let's say this was below 0.05 for gender. After that, and ideally, even if you have non-significant findings, I would like you to report the means and standard deviations, but you don't have to. But if you do have significant findings, you do have to report the means and standard deviations and report back regarding which level, right, was higher or lower. In other words, you're describing what the main effect looks like. So let me go back here. And when you go here to the output, you go to Descriptive Statistics. And I'm only looking at one IV at a time. So I'm looking at the total, right? And here's male, total, 3.3. Let's, so we're assuming there was a significant difference. We're pretending that was the case. And we're trying to see, well, who was higher then? Who had more knowledge? Males had 3.3 on average, or 3.34, and female participants had 3.46. So if we were using that data, so as you can see, it doesn't look very different. But if there was a significant difference, there might be, even with this small of a difference sometimes, if your sample is big enough, you would report that it looks like female participants had more knowledge overall than male participants regarding on-campus mental health resources, or whatever your data is, right? So you might be saying, it looks like female participants scored higher on the video game, or not it looks like, female participants scored higher on the game, the video game skill test compared to male participants. Or if we had a difference for the other IV, less experience and more experience, again, it looks very like a very small difference, but keep in mind, we can't go off of this alone, because sometimes you look at these numbers and you'll say, hey, it looks like a big difference, but you don't have statistical difference. Your p-value will be above 0.05. Even though it looks different here, you can't claim a difference unless you have, unless you're able to reject the null. Your p-level has to be below 0.05. So let's say you did have a significant main effect for class standing. In this case, you would look here, less experience, more experience. less experience had 3.3, more experienced had 3.5. You would report that the more experienced students had higher knowledge about on-campus mental health resources than less experienced students. Now, keep in mind, I'm just sharing this with you as an example. There is actually no significant difference based on this example for class standing. And there is no interaction, right? We're looking here. Now, if you clicked on the option to show the effect size, don't get fooled by this. You're not looking here, right, at the partial eta squared. You're looking here. Now, this you're not reporting, but I think it's useful to know. If you had a significant finding, you would look here to determine the strength of the relationship, the strength of the relationship between gender and knowing about on-campus mental health resources, the strength of the relationship between class standing and how that relates to knowing about on-campus resources. And this last one would be the strength between both and how they predict or they're related to knowing about on-campus health resources. But again, for your write-up, you're only looking here, and you're getting some numbers from here to do the write-up, and then you're looking at the means and standard deviations. Look at the handout to make sure you're getting the right information and the right numbers. Again, like always, if you do get stuck, reach out to me or anybody else on the teaching team if I happen to have TAs in this semester.